Hey everybody, it's me, Lawrence Presman, excited to be here. It's the NFL Preview Show with Matt Joseph at Mid-Major Matt and the great Ralph Michaels. No disrespect to you, Matt, at Cal Sports LV. Matt, you need a signature pen move or something. I really love Ralph's move.
Should I do? I'll figure out I'll workshop some things, and then we'll come back with it next week.
Okay, bro. Maybe like I do the bicep flex, and then
yeah, I'm not doing
that. And then Ralph does the pen flick. Maybe you can just pick your nose.
Not sanitary nowadays, there, Prez.
Okay, fair enough. Well, let's say hello. I haven't spoke to either of you guys in a week. Ralph, how have you been, my friend?
Doing great. You know, every time I come on, I got to mention something new at Wager Talk. It's not posted yet, but TD Alabama is the 247sports.com site for Bama football. I did a 6-page guide for Bama football, everything about their opponents this year, a schedule. It'll be up at Wager Talk later today for those college football fans.
Excellent stuff. I know you've been working round the clock, NHL guide, NFL guide, college football guide. Great to have you as part of our team. And you, Mr. Joseph, how have you been, brother?
I'm good. I think I got a tweet last week from Ralph's burner account. Somebody on Wednesday who was unhappy with my remarks on the Cleveland Browns, so I could only figure it was just Ralph using a burner account to get me back.
Yeah, well, listen, nobody was happy with you last week.
Well, that's why we got the negative. That's why we got the thumbs down, right?
Yeah, dude, Ralph and I are honored to have you on these shows, and we're always happy with you. Welcome to the NFL Preview Show, everybody. Justin Grammer, nice to see you, my friend. If anybody's got questions, let us know. We're going to take a look at the Colts, Titans, Texans, and Jags. Who's going to win the division, win-loss records, if there's any potential opportunity for playoff situations, division wins, etc., all related to the AFC South. And a quick reminder to everybody, Kelly did an incredible job hosting the golf show. It's up at our channel live as we speak. Head over to Wager Talk TV, our YouTube channel. Watch the golf show. Herself, Dave Koken, and Nick Borman are on that, and as well, Drew Martin, Ralph Michaels, and Rob Vino took apart some college football action on our 1 o'clock show. It's also up live on our YouTube channel. And Ralph, what did you guys discuss?
You know, we talked about the first 5 teams alphabetically in the Big 12. I will say this, I am very high on Iowa State. And in a rarity, is there value betting the favorite to win a college football conference minus $110? Find out what I have to say about that.
Well, we got more people in the chat room. Robert Allen, nice to see you. David Jackson, we're not talking about Miami, but yes, Ralph and I do have a $1,000 with $500. What was it, Ralph?
We have a 500 on 6, 500 on 6.5 win totals. I have the unders, you have the overs.
There you go. But today we're talking AFC South. So let's get to it, guys, and let's talk about the division overall first. My take is, and I said this to you guys off air. I'm fascinated. I think we're going into a 2020 NFL season with just some incredible storylines, obviously with the Patriots and that division being wide open. And then the New Orleans, Atlanta, Tampa Bay, Carolina division, really, really sexy. What's going to happen with the Rams? Are they going to fall away? How big is Hopkins to Arizona? That division has got a lot of juice. The NFC East division wide open as well between Philadelphia and Dallas. And I think this division is as sexy as the rest of them, Ralph. The Colts with a new quarterback, really, probably the most complete team if Phillip Rivers can put together a good season. One of the best O-lines in the league, a rock-solid defensive core, good wide receiving, a nice running back tandem. And then you've got the Titans coming off of, an incredible upset wild card run in the playoffs with Ryan Tannehill now signed long-term. Henry coming out of the backfield, the best back out there. And Matt, I'll ask you later, but Henry's odds to win the rushing title. And then we got the Jaguars, a team that is just, decimated on defense, but have a really interesting quarterback and all their offensive weapons are intact. And the Texans, I find the most interesting team in this entire division. They obviously lost Hopkins, but, with all that said, I look at the Texans, and we'll get into this much deeper. They have weapons everywhere. Ralph, I think this division is wide open between the Colts, Titans, and Texans. And I think it shows in the odds, but the Colts are the favorite to win the division. The Texans are third. I'm really excited to see how this division plays out.
Prez, just before we got on air, we were talking, I only have 1.5 points separating the first three teams in the division. And can you name another team in the NFL in the last decade that has won 21 games the last 2 years, has their quarterback, and went from the favorite to the number 3 pick in the division? Amazing how much Houston's fallen off despite being 21 wins. Now, I understand when the Colts fell back because of losing Andrew Luck, but you have your quarterback and you've won 21 games and you're the number 3 pick in the division.
Yeah, and not only that, Ralph, but it's not like the Colts and the Titans added Tom Brady in his prime or Rob Gronkowski. I mean, the Titans are coming back pretty much intact from last year with no major adds. I mean, they have shored up their secondary. And the Colts have added Phillip Rivers, and some might argue that's an upgrade to Jacoby. But, if Phillip plays anything like he played last year, that's a downgrade. So, ultimately, neither the Colts or the Titans have done anything to separate themselves from the Texans, yet they find themselves so much further ahead in the odds to win the division. Super interesting stuff. Matt Joseph, your thoughts overall?
Well, I think the Colts, adding, DeForest Buckner in that trade was huge. The
and
drafting
Vic
of Jonathan
Beasley.
Taylor. Right, and Vic Beasley. I do worry about Xavier Rhodes, about how much he has left in the tank, because he was pretty much toast in Minnesota. But they've got some depth behind him. And then I think this division, more than any other, an injury, the healthiest team's going to win this division. We'll get into it with the Texans, and we even talked about it at the end of last week's episode. If the Houston Texans can get a bunch of games from their injured folks, then they'll win this division and potentially win it rather easily. But I don't have faith that Brandon Cooks and Will Fuller and J.J. Watt and all these guys could stay healthy for however long of a season we have.
Yeah, and that's fair enough, brother. But, ultimately, you're looking at these teams and, I think the Colts could withstand an injury, even at their premier position at quarterback, and not maybe drop that much. But the Titans without Henry are done. The Texans without Deshaun Watson are done. And the Jags are ultimately fielding a team of injured players in the sense that who the hell are these people? So they're not even worth the discussion. So to me, yeah, you're right. Injuries are going to play a huge role in this division. Boys, before we get into it, I'm going to ask you both a question. Who's the best quarterback in this division, Ralph?
Oh, Deshaun Watson.
Matt?
Yeah, definitely. Deshaun Watson.
Who's got the best wide receiving core in this division, 4 deep? Ralph?
Yeah, well, again, we'll see if they are.
On
obviously,
paper.
Again, I'm going to go with Matt. Well, I can say, Brandon Cooks, but when you've played for 4 teams, there's obviously something wrong with you. So I understand you get Cobb and Cooks.
I didn't say what the answer is, Ralph. What's the answer?
Well, I know, Prez, that you are high on Houston. So therefore, I examined your question and came up with your answer.
Just give me your answer, Ralph.
I guess I would say Houston. Yes.
Matt?
I'm going Indy. I like T.Y. Hilton. I like Michael Pittman, the draft pick. I like Paris Campbell. I think Paris Campbell's going to be awesome this year. And I think Zach Pascal as a number 4 is not a terrible number 4 wide receiver.
Who's got the best single player on defense in this division, injuries aside, Ralph?
Well, that's J.J. Watt. I mean, we're talking top 3 in the NFL.
So here we sit with the best quarterback in the division, the best. Sorry, Matt, I didn't ask you that question, but I know your answer is J.J. Watt.
No, it's not though, actually, because he can't stay healthy.
I said injuries aside.
He's
okay, fine. Darius Leonard, I think, is still better than him, and he had 163 tackles his rookie year, 121 last year. I think Darius Leonard's the best defensive player in this division.
Fair enough.
You're high.
I'm not going to argue with him, Ralph. J.J. Watt is just such a game changer. It's ridiculous. But, hey, listen, tackles are important. It is a very key component to this game. Boys, I wanted to start that way because, yes, I am absolutely shocked. Houston at plus 320. We're going to get there. I'm using lines from DraftKings and Bet365 to let everybody know. Let's start with Indianapolis. They are plus 120 to win the division. Their over and under is 9, pretty much even money, close to it. You can find a few 8.5s at minus 150 or 160. And, you know, Ralph, I think Indy, Tennessee, and Houston are all going to be within a game apart. I mean, 9-7, 8-8. Maybe one team will lay down at 10-6. But I think it's going to be very, very close. I think they're going to swap wins against each other. I don't think any of those teams are going to sweep the other. I think at plus 120 for Indy to win the division might be the single worst valued bet we have discussed across all our shows. I don't get it. I understand T.Y. Hilton. Matt likes to talk about injuries all the time, but he's welcome to mention J.J. Watt, but didn't mention T.Y. Hilton. I don't think their running game is even close to Tennessee's or Houston's. I think their quarterback would struggle to... I can't have any sex references on this show. So I think their quarterback will struggle to cut steak on a Tuesday. That's how dead his arms are. See, I made a shift there, guys. I don't understand this bet at all. I can't bet over. I can't bet under. I think 9 is probably the right number, but plus 120 to win the division is absurd. Ralph?
I agree with plus 120 is not enough value because basically 3 teams can win it. So they should be giving plus 200 on all 3 teams.
Yeah.
So, you're obviously not getting fair odds and the theoretical hold is so big. But with that said, obviously I'm not betting anyone to win the division, but I would bet Indianapolis to win the division. I really would. I think Phillip Rivers now is in a situation where he has an offensive line.
Best in football.
I'm putting a lot of stock in Taylor that, he could run behind Wisconsin's line and so he can run behind Indy's line. You still have Mac to fall back on. As Matt alluded to, they do have wideouts and, people couldn't use T.Y. Hilton to the right degree. But with play action being a huge part of the game this year, I think that's a benefit. And very rarely, this is the only conference this has ever happened. We've talked about the schedules. You obviously play 6 division games. You all play the same 4 AFC division teams. You play the same 4 NFC division games. But it comes down to the 2 wild card games, which are based on where you finished. Houston has to play at Kansas City and home against New England. I'll give them 1-1. Tennessee has to play at Denver, home to Buffalo. I'm going to go 1-1, maybe 2-0. Indy at Las Vegas and home to the Jets. By far the best schedule.
Yeah.
So if they can hold true in their games, their two crossover games based on schedules are so much easier. When I look at their back-to-back games, they only have 2 back-to-back road games this year. The second of back-to-back teams at Cleveland, at Las Vegas, as easy as you can expect. When we look at some of those others, I'm just going to mention the Titans now. The Titans have to play at Indy and at Houston The two toughest games they have all year, the most important games, on the second of back-to-back road trips. That schedule's just brutal. So, explaining that with Indy, I am still a Rivers fan. I think he can survive in this system, and he's the right quarterback. I do pick Indy to win the division, although it's not bettable for me. And as you said, just because I don't think the odds are fair with as tight as this division is.
Yeah, and Ralph, I don't disagree. I mean, I think Indy, especially as you point out, from a schedule perspective, they have it a little better than the Titans and Texans. So I agree. I mean, I think Indy is the favorite to win the division. Just at 120, I consider that a really bad bet. I just want to welcome Stave into the chat. Jake Horowitz, nice to see you, my friend. Robert Allen and everybody, thank you guys so much for joining us. Matt Joseph, I'm going to guess that you are high on Indy. You've rolled them in a blunt, no filter. You've been smoking them all night, put them in a bong, plopped them on your tongue in a form of acid drip. Talk to me, baby.
No, see, I'm trying to I like the Texans as much as you did, but I'm just saying I'm trying to be honest here when I talk about the Colts, and that I like their wide receiving core. I like their defense. I like Darius Leonard. I think that the number's pretty good with regards to the win total. I think 9 is right on. And if you're not going to take them to win the division, I don't know if they're necessarily going to make the wild card. So maybe a no playoffs at plus 175. Look, Phillip Rivers is older. Phillip Rivers is playing behind his best offensive line, so that should help. And Jonathan Taylor is going to be good. And I like as many props as I could potentially get on Jonathan Taylor because I think he's going to be busy this year. I think Paris Campbell is going to be a guy who comes in this offense and does a lot of good work. It's funny that Ralph mentions the Las Vegas game. That's my flat spot. When you look at that stretch, when they've got at Tennessee, Green Bay home, Tennessee home, at Houston, and then at Las Vegas before Houston again, I just wonder if the Colts are focused for that game in Las Vegas against the Raiders. I think that you may find as futures goes on here that Las Vegas is that sleeper game, is that flat spot because, these are guys they'll probably get out there Friday night and they'll spend Saturday and stuff like that. So I think the Colts lose that game in Las Vegas against the Raiders. I said 9 is right on target for me, so I would like the over 8.5, although I'm not swallowing the minus 150, minus 160. I think the best bet potentially involving the Colts is if you don't believe them to win the division, plus 175 to not make the playoffs might be the best way to go.
Josh CT, welcome to the show. Great point, Matt. I am not, listen, I'll tell you guys both, I love Phillip Rivers. I mean, how can you not? As a human being, he's just such a good dude. I mean, he's, a kind, humble alpha male. I would love to see him win a Super Bowl. It might happen when he retires and becomes a coach or a general manager. But I think he's done, Ralph. I really, I feel like Phillip Rivers is done. And I hope I'm wrong. He had some really good wideouts last year. He obviously didn't have an offensive line like Indy's, but man, I can't see Rivers being a year older than last year and actually being better.
Well, I think the difference is this. He was sacked 34 times. That led to his 20 interceptions. He threw for 4,600 yards, had a 23-20 ratio. Certainly not good, but when you are sacked 34 times and probably hit another 200 times, and then you have a rush attack that is averaging under 4 yards per carry. Melvin Gordon averaged 3.8 yards per carry. The offensive line was banged up. I mean, this is a guy who kept his family in San Diego and drove up every day to practice in L.A. because you were talking about what a nice guy he is and what a great father he is and family figure. I think having structure, number one, having fans, number two, having a dome to play that you call your own and having some pride, having an offensive line can refresh someone. I mean, I don't think you can give Rivers comeback player of the year because he threw for 4,600 yards last year, but I think he could be reborn in Indianapolis.
Well, I hope so. I really do hope so. I mean, you want to see a guy like Phillip Rivers get, all the way to the Super Bowl, do his thing. Just an absolutely outstanding guy. And I think Indianapolis really shored up their defense as well. Matt, you spoke about it. Xavier Rhodes, DeForest Buckner,
Vic Beasley.
Vic Beasley. I think
I misspoke. Tennessee is Beasley. Sorry.
Oh yes, and Brown. I love Brown. But we're gonna get to Tennessee. It's going to be an interesting year with Indy. I don't think any of us are betting either under or over on the win-loss, and none of us are betting them to win the division. Correct, Matt?
Let me add one thing about Rivers. I think Rivers is going to be more of a game manager this year, too. If you look at the pass attempts that he had those last couple of years, 591, 508, 575, I think Indy's going to be one of these teams. We talked about it last week with the black and blue. I think they're going to run the ball a lot with Taylor.
Yep.
We're going to run the ball with Mack. I think I would potentially invest on some unders for Phillip Rivers and props this year in terms of touchdown passes, maybe his yards. I just don't think they're going to ask him to do as much. He's not going to be constantly down one possession like he always was in Los Angeles.
Yeah, no, that's an outstanding point, and I agree. I think they're going to run the ball a ton, and they've got a really nice tandem in the backfield. Josh CT, I think people forget how bad Phillip Rivers was last year. I do not forget that. I didn't forget that, and I pointed it out. I love those prop bet thoughts, Matt, in regards to Phillip Rivers, because I agree, and I think their coach knows if they are sitting on Phillip Rivers' arm to win games, to win the division, to win the Super Bowl, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I'm looking at one sports book where his over/under his over/under touchdowns is 27.5. I kind of lean to the under there, and I think if it is over, then the Colts season is in more trouble than we think, because that means he's throwing the ball a ton, and they're constantly behind.
Yeah, great point. Ralph, any thoughts about that?
I'm going to say this. I mean, I haven't seen any. They're going to use two tight ends with Doyle, and Burton, so it's tough to say this, but I think if you find a Doyle touchdown prop, they're going to have so much play action open to them down in the red zone that I expect the touchdowns, almost like the New England days. Phillip Rivers has never been able to use play action because he had no offensive line and no running game. Now he has both. Play action is going to be wide open to him, and when's the best time to use play action? To your tight end in the red zone for touchdowns.
Well, brother, Melvin Gordon for 2 seasons was one of the best running backs in the league. He had Keenan Allen. He had
Hunter Henry.
Yeah. So I'm not buying that he didn't have a running back routine, but I will tell you this: not only has he never had an O-line like this, very few quarterbacks have ever had an O-line like this. This is a historically good O-line, and man, I think we're going to see a lot of unders in their games as well. I think their defense is going to be solid, especially in the passing game, and I think they're going to rush the ball a ton. Boys, let's get to the Titans. Again, just fascinating team here. Plus 170 to win the division. 8.5 is the total. Look, I would be more inclined to bet Tennessee at plus 180 to win the division than I would Indianapolis at plus 120. I think it is a reasonable bet. I think if somebody says to me, I bet the Titans at plus 170 to win the division, Prez, was that a good bet? I would say, yeah. And then if someone said, I didn't bet them, should I not bet them? I would say, don't bet them. There's arguments on both sides from my perspective here, where there is no argument to bet plus 120 for Indianapolis. Look, Tennessee is going to be as good or as bad as Derrick Henry takes them. This team has got a running back for the ages. Literally, Jerome Bettis meets Eric Dickerson. This guy's got speed. This guy's got power. This guy is a downhill north-south runner. The coach understands that. I really like him a lot. Vic Beasley will really be a great addition. The one thing about the Titans is they might not have been, they might not have had world-class edge rushers, but their inside linebacking core is as good as any in the league. And Tannehill, Who knows, Ralph? I'll go to you first, but I can't sit here with any assurity and say Ryan Tannehill is going to be as good as he was, in the last 10 games, I think it was, 10 games plus the playoffs last year, or as how bad he was when he played in Miami. I don't know what to do here either, brother. I can't go over. I can't go under. I do lean on Tennessee at plus 170 to win the division. I'm not going to get to the window on it, though. Another confusing team for me, Ralph.
Well, let me say this. Ryan Tannehill at Miami was like Phillip Rivers with the Chargers last year. What happened to Tannehill at Tennessee? Oh, yeah, he had an offensive line and he had a running game and he had play action passes so he could complete 69% and have a 27-7 ratio. That's the same type of I'm expecting Phillip Rivers to take that same type of step. I mean, to go 9-7 4 straight years. If you were in New York or LA, I mean, God, you would have the biggest fan bases in the world. In Tennessee, nobody talks about them. But 9-7 4 straight years is a positive. Very few teams can put up nine wins for that many years. Statistically, you look at their numbers. They were number 6 in the NFL in yards per play diff. Again, that's something I look at. Number 4 at offense, number 16 on defense. They didn't have an abundance of close wins. They had the same number of close wins, same number of close losses. They were plus 6 turnovers. Well, you have a quarterback that doesn't turn the ball over. That's reasonable. You can do that again. A couple things I don't like. The 5 road games in the last 7 weeks. When you look at their schedule, the first half is easy. Yeah. At Baltimore, at Indy, Cleveland, at Jacksonville, Detroit, at Green Bay, at Houston. So a brutal stretch, although their schedule is the easiest amongst all of them. I have them at 9 wins in my theoreticals with the win percentages panned out. But to me, they are the most solid team. They're a team I expect to get to 9 games. They're the team you absolutely want to take on the road because they don't make mistakes. They can run the ball. They play solid defense. So, to me, they're nothing splashy. They're going to be a 9-7 win team. You're certainly going to see a regression from Tannehill. Derrick Henry, can he last? He only had 215 carries in 2018, but 386 carries last year, touching the ball 400 times. It's tough to do when you're going to get beat up a little bit more. So, to me, a 9-7 win team. I agree with you that, it seems silly that I have Tennessee rated higher, but yet the odds for Indianapolis are better to win the division. But I'm still not going to take Tennessee just because I expect some regression. Indy and Houston are both better. And you look at Tennessee last year, health, mid-major Matt said it. The healthiest team's going to win the division. Well, you look in the NFL, those teams that stayed as healthy as like the Tennessee Titans did last year, it's rare to have those back-to-back perfectly healthy seasons.
Yeah, and especially, I think this team is, all eggs in one basket, Matt. But I will say this. If you're going to bet Tennessee to get over 9 wins, and I don't actually have a problem with that bet. I can get to 10 wins here. You got to bet them now. Do not wait for the season to start. They go into the season at the Broncos. Then they're hosting the Jaguars. They're at Minnesota. They're hosting the Steelers. They're hosting the Bills. This team could start 5-0, 4-1, flat out, right out of the gate, as opposed to a Houston team that will probably be the inverse of that. So if you're listening to the show and you do like Tennessee to get to 10 wins, which I agree with, I would get down on it sooner than later. Matt?
So the Titans are going to be the team that hopes we have fans from week 1 because as Ralph pointed out, with 4 of those first 6 with at home, this is a team, especially since you got Pittsburgh, Buffalo, and Houston all coin flip games. You're going to need the fans. You're going to need the atmosphere there. And if they don't, and let's say, as I've kind of looked at, let's say week 9, a magic number, and we start to get fans in, and you start looking at all those road games, Baltimore, Indy, Jacksonville, Green Bay, Houston, like Tennessee is one of those teams that's sitting there saying, week 1, we need the fans. We need to have the atmosphere. You guys talk about Tannehill. I don't know if I believe in Tannehill yet. He had a really good season. I think he fits this offense rather well, but what happens when he starts getting behind? What happens if Derrick Henry does get hurt? I do like Darrington Evans, watched a lot of him at Appalachian State. I think he'll be a decent running back in the NFL, but he's no Derrick Henry. I think the Titans I got to 9 wins. So I'm not really touching the win total. I'm less apt to take the no playoffs here because it's only, I think, plus 110 in Ralph's guide. So there's not much value there because I do think that they're a playoff team. But and the flat spot for me, I'm going to say it right today there, Prez. 1985 Bears on December 6th, they get the Cleveland Browns at home after playing Indy at Baltimore at Indy. I know at Jacksonville's after that game, but when you get Indy, Baltimore, Indy 3 games beforehand, pardon me if you're going to let down a little bit at home against the Cleveland Browns. So that's my flat spot that I'm looking at. It's funny. Every year I look at Tennessee and I'm like, they got to Henry and they got a good defense, but I'm like, how are they getting to 9 wins every year? So I think, like you guys said, this is another 9-win year for the Titans. We're going to be scratching our heads as to how they get there, but this is a team that really needs fans in the stands starting week 1.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Ralph. And you know what? It's really something that everybody should look at across the board when betting these win-loss totals because, there are teams that are going to start on the road and play, their first 3 of 5, 4 of 6 on the road, and then really have that home field advantage when the fans do come back, God willing they do. And then there's the inverse of that, and the Tennessee Titans are that team where they're just starting everything at home right off the bat. Yes, sir, Ralph.
I will say this, I was changing my pages in the Wager Talk schedule guide. The only 2 teams to go over the Las Vegas win total each of the last 3 years were the Kansas City Chiefs and the Tennessee Titans. Their win total, 8.5 3 years ago, 8-8. So they've been exceeding it, but not by much. They've just been winning that one extra game to get over. So they've gone over 3 straight years.
Great point, Ralph. Okay, boys, let's get into the Houston Texans. And, they're plus 320 to win the division. 7.5 wins. Look, they've got a nightmare of a schedule set up for them. There is no doubt about that. There's really no major spots where they have 3 easy games in a row. They start the season with the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Steelers, and the Vikings. They could start 0-4. They won't, but they could start. Then they've got the Jags, and then they're right back into the thick of things with the Titans and the Pack. Then they got the Jags, then the Browns, then the Pats, then the Lions. I guess those 4 would be considered their soft spot, but they do also have the Bears and the Bengals. And, when you look at the schedule and you think, okay, they've got Jacksonville twice. They've got the Bears. They've got the Bengals. They've got the Lions. Those are 5 potential wins. Patriots are a potential win. Browns are a potential win. Those are 7 legitimately potential wins that I can count. And frankly, I think they could beat any of these other teams, excluding Kansas City, especially considering they will be on the road. Man, I look at this Texans team and I'm thinking over 7.5 and plus 320 to win the division, Ralph. Best quarterback in the division. Best, everybody talks about Hopkins. And yeah, man, look, dude, guy's a beast. I get it. Like, there are very few wide receivers like him, and he fits the mold of Deshaun Watson so well because Watson's a running quarterback, and he does throw the ball, a foot to 2 feet off of target, and Hopkins has got incredible hands. But man, Adams, Stills, Cooks, Fuller, then they've got a good tight end, decent running game. I'm baffled. I understand that everybody hates on Bill O'Brien. Is it because he's made it to the playoffs year after year after year? I don't understand the hate on Bill O'Brien. I get it. He's made some dumbass calls. Bad clock manager. Ralph, we could go apart. We could take, Mike Holmgren, Andy Reid. We've seen Andy Reid mismanage game clocks before. I don't understand the complete hatred towards Bill O'Brien. I love Houston over, and I love plus 320 to win the division. Go ahead, Ralph.
Well, we do this show for two reasons, Prez. To, number one, entertain, and number two, to educate. So you went through your Houston schedule with rose-colored glasses, picking off all these games that they might win, and you got to a point that you're happy. How about if I told you Houston is going to be favored by 3 or more points in 3 games? They're going to be a dog or a 2-point favorite or less in 13 games. You put that in perspective, you're going to lose 8 of those 13, or at least 7 of those 13, and there's no way you're going to win the division. So schedule-wise, you play the toughest, your first 4 games are the toughest 4-game stretch in the NFL this season. And that's not me just saying it. That's me going through my Excel, taking every 4-game stretch in the NFL, adding up the power ratings, and coming up with a physical number. Their first 4 games at Kansas City, Baltimore, at Pittsburgh, and Minnesota, I think was 44.5 opponent power rating. The next highest in the NFL was 36.5, New England. So that means that's a 2-point difference per team, per game, those first 4 games. So before I finish, I'm going to come back to you, Prez, because you are high on the Texans. Win the division 3-1. We're talking about Tennessee may go 4-0, you said. Houston has at Kansas City, home Baltimore, at Pittsburgh, right, home Minnesota. When do you want to bet Houston?
After week 4, and I think it's going to be an outstanding bet. I'm with you, and I was going to say this as we led into Matt. I was going to say this as we led into Matt. Firstly, I just want to say for the record, I'm okay with anybody betting over 7.5 right now. They will get a better bet later. I also will lay this out at you, Ralph. We have a $1,000 bet on Miami's win-loss record. I will happily bet right now that the Houston Texans will be favored at least 4 times this year.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of toss-up games in there, Prez. I have my power ratings have them 0.5-point favorite to Minnesota, 8.5 to Jacksonville, 0.5 to Green Bay, 4.5 to Jacksonville, 1 to New England, 0.5 to Detroit. So there's a bunch of halves and ones that I have them as a favorite, but I said a favorite of 2 and a dog in 13 games because there's all those pick'em games. So, again, I was stretching the point a little bit, but so you're going to bet them. You're going to bet them after the Pittsburgh game or after the first 2 after KC and Baltimore?
I'm going to bet them right now. I'll tell everybody that I'm betting over 7.5 right now. I'm betting plus 320 right now. I'm betting that they beat Baltimore, and I'm going to be betting it again after the 4th game when the Tennessee Titans are 4-0 and Houston is 1-3. Matt, look, I get it wrong. I've been high on Atlanta in the last 2 years, and I didn't know what I was talking about. So I understand I could be wrong here too, but man, 3-1 for a team with those kind of weapons and a quarterback that I think is really good. Talk to me, brother.
Yeah, I think that, as we talked about last week, the health of this team is the most crucial in the league because J.J. Watt, David Johnson, Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller, all guys who have a ton of talent, but they actually have to stay on the field. I look at their cornerbacks. I like Gary and Conley out of college, but he's been a little disappointing. Now change of system, change of scenery, maybe that works. Vernon Hargraves has the talent. Bradley Roby, it's not a bad secondary. But when I look at the Texans, the team's health is imperative because Deshaun Watson's been sacked 106 times the last 2 years combined, and he can't keep doing that. Eventually, it's going to catch up to him, and I'm not believing in A.J. McCarron. It's funny. You mentioned the Bears. You mentioned the Lions. But in scheduling spot situations, the game against the Bears is in between two against the Colts. And let's say Nick Foles, we've already talked about when we did our pro previews there. I like the Bears this year, and if their defense and if Nick Foles plays well, that game at Chicago is not a guaranteed win. The Thanksgiving game in Detroit against the Lions comes against in between New England, which even though Brady's not there, that's still a game they're going to get up for, and then a home game against the Colts. So who's to say 4 days later on Thanksgiving, Houston's going to be that motivated for a game like that? So those are two games you're counting as sure victories. I'm not
counting them as sure victories at all, brother. But
you were saying that they were likely victories.
No, that they could be victories. But let me tell you this, brother. They could beat Kansas City week 1. They were up on Kansas City. They had Kansas City's number. Kansas City's going to come in all emotional with the banner raising, etc., etc. They're likely not going to. But it's not outrageous. They can beat the Ravens. I'm not as high on the Ravens as you are. I think they come out of week 4, 2-2. Going into after week 5, 3-2. I am. It makes no sense. Are you kidding me? Ralph, if Hopkins was on Houston, they would be bringing back the same team they had last year, give or take. What would their numbers be? What would their numbers be with Hopkins?
Okay, with Hopkins last year, this team was number 22 in the NFL, minus 4.4 yards per play. And why were they successful last year? Prez, I'm a numbers guy, and when I see a team that went 6-1 in games decided by a field goal, you don't win those games back-to-back years. You were +5 close wins. That doesn't happen. You have a quarterback sacked 61 times.
Yes.
He's getting his ass kicked back there.
Yes.
And you talk about, the best quarterback and maybe the best defensive player and blah, blah, blah. You ask almost any coach, you want a quarterback or you want an O-line to start off your NFL team. A lot of guys are going to take that O-line. And if you like Tennessee and like Indy, where people like Tannehill and Rivers can look okay.
And I don't disagree with you. I mean, the O-line is crucial, but I do disagree with your facts, which is an interesting statement because you can't disagree with facts. But, Ralph.
You can disagree that they return to the median, and yes,
Ralph,
my numbers show that they do.
I'm going to go out on a limb. So your statement that a team that wins close games, in 1 year, they can't count on that happening on a regular basis. My argument would be that takes into account every team, led by every coach, quarterbacked by every quarterback, because that's the numbers. It's a holistic statement. I would argue that if you look at Brady, if you look at Manning, if you look at Elway and Marino and Favre and Rodgers and Russell Wilson, I would say that they have won close games year in and year out. And I think Deshaun Watson is a last 2-minute quarterback. He's a guy that can run, can throw, can bowl over people. He's a winner. I don't think that statistic is as important to me as it is you.
The last 19 teams that were +5 close wins or better, 18 saw their record decrease the next year.
I think we could see Houston's record decrease as well, brother.
Yeah, you could go to 9. I understand. They were 10-6.
Right.
But again, it's not just me saying this. It's historical numbers based on fact that, you can win close games, but you're also losing some close losses. And when you win 5 of your 6 close games and only lose 1, those things even out.
Matt, you got to jump in here. I mean, we all know where I'm at. I'm unsure where Ralph is at because he's just arguing with me and not actually telling me whether he would or wouldn't take the bets on those things. Like, Ralph, I don't know if you're over or under 7.5. I don't know if you like plus 320. I just know you like arguing with me.
Well, yeah, my numbers, even though I'm not high, my numbers say 7.88 wins. So over 7.5, I could deal with. Winning the division, do I think there's value compared to 3-1? I started off the segment by saying if I have a 21, normally this is the type of value I love, Prez. I am normally on your side. You have a team in the NFL that's won 21 games in 2 years, and you're the third pick in your division. I do that, but just looking at the way the schedule breaks out, I think they lose their first 2 games. That sets a different mindset, and I agree that players that often get injured and players that are on multiple teams, like Cooks has been and like Watt continues to get hurt, those things just seem to keep happening. So, not opposed to your Texans, but I just do love arguing with you,
Matt. Over under plus 320. Is there a bet for you here?
I think the best way, I'm not playing the win total. I think the best way to play this team, because I think that they can go over the number. I know I've crapped on them on this show, but I also think, I think they can win 10 games. If everything stays healthy, if their offense plays up to their potential, if Conley and Hargraves and Roby are really good in the secondary, J.J. Watt plays, I think they can win 10 games. But the problem for me is I think they could also win 6 games. Let's say Watson gets hurt. Let's say Cooks is gone. Let's say Fuller's gone. So to me, the best value here is to take the Texans to make the playoffs and to win the division, and you hope that you get one of those 2 bets, and you hope that the Texans are good enough to maybe be that second playoff team. Let's say a Colts win the division, or let's say a Titans win the division, and if they somehow, have also 9 wins, then you get that, yes bet on the playoffs, and you hedge yourself a little bit with a yes on the division. And if they start to fall down the tubes a little bit, then you start to fade them and you get your money back. But I'm not ready to touch this win total. I'll go around that and hope they make the playoffs and try and hit one of these plus bets besides that.
Great call. I love that. Both those bets. And you could win them both, obviously, too, right? Because they win the division, they make the playoffs. So that makes a hell of a lot of sense to me. Ralph, I'm going to go to Matt first in regards to the Jacksonville Jaguars. But while I'm doing that, we've got some comments in the chat room maybe you can look into. Stave McPherson, what I found is that the Super Bowl winning team usually wins week 1 by a considerable margin.
I don't have that in the database to be able to look up, so that would be me manually going
Okay, so don't
through
worry
it,
about
which
that.
We don't have time to do
You
that
got
yet.
it.
But hey, for next week's show, I will mark that down, and we will start the show with that.
Perfect.
So tune in next week.
You got it, brother. Okay, boys, Jacksonville Jaguars, 4.5 is the win-loss, plus 1,800 to win the division. So to quote Carmine, plus 1,800 for Jacksonville to win the division means if you put $100 on Jacksonville to win the division, you have made yourself exactly zero minus $100. Because
Superbook USA had him 40-1, Prez.
40-1 equates to the exact same odds as 18-1 and 2,000,000-1. It is minus the $100. This team is a mess. This team is a mess on both sides. I cannot get to 5, Matt. I'll go to you first. I actually like under the total. I can honestly get to a maximum of 3 wins for Jacksonville.
I have 4. I threw in the Cleveland game on the 29th. I think Miami, Detroit, Cleveland, Chicago are your 4 potentials, all of them at home.
They technically could lose all of those games.
Oh, certainly. They're going to be the worst team for all those games.
Yeah.
I think Miami's better. Detroit, Cleveland, Chicago also are all. But you're also going to get a team that goes to Jacksonville and lays an egg. I just think that there's going to be somebody's going to do it. The problem with these low totals is, as bad as some teams are, you really don't have a lot of margin for error in that let's say Jacksonville finds lightning in a bottle and the mustache is a good quarterback and everything, which I don't think he is. Let's say they start playing well and everything and they become a feel-good story in a weird offseason. There's not a lot of margin for error here. The thing that you should consider here is, remember, they're going to trade players before the deadline. If you're going to take any sort of Leonard Fournette props, he's not going to be a Jaguar. Yeah. I don't know when the date is for the trading deadline, but Fournette's not going to be there come November, whenever that is over. If there's a Yannick Ngakoue prop, now that's not going to matter as much if he gets traded, but he's not going to be there most likely in November. So a lot of their star guys are not going to be there because they're going to trade. Tyler Eifert could have a good first half of the season. He could be really busy. Remember, he was good in Cincinnati before injuries ruined him. He's going to be a reliable target for Minshew, but he could get traded too. I do love Laviska Shenault. The guy is so good at wide receiver. I don't know how busy he will be in this offense, but the kid out of Colorado, I really like him. There's not a lot to say here for the Jaguars. I lean to the under, but once again, there's just not a lot of margin for error if somehow this ragtag bunch figures it out and starts winning some games.
Yeah, so, Ralph, I see a lot of margin for error here because it's 4.5, which means I have 4 games of error here. You go down the schedule, Ralph. Week 1 versus the Colts, then the Titans, the Dolphins, the Bengals. I mean, there is no team, I don't see Caltech, Appalachian State, the Toronto Argonauts. I don't see any of those teams on the schedule. I don't see an Arena League team. I don't see an XFL team on here. What are the odds of Jacksonville losing every single game? Does anyone know?
Well, I mean, it's going to be astronomical.
Take that bet.
50-50. You have 50-50 chance against Miami, a 50-50 hosting Detroit.
I don't buy it. I don't buy 50-50 hosting Detroit. Seriously?
Yeah, I have them as a 2-point dog.
Yeah, but because you have them, that doesn't actually mean that is what it is.
This team won 6 games last year.
Yeah.
You act like they were 0-16 and they got outgained in every game.
Yeah, they actually had a bit of a defense at the beginning of last year.
And they're going to have a defense this year.
I think the Jacksonville Jaguars have more chance.
And Miles Jack and quarterback Henderson, and you added Gunter. Not that he's going to be great. Melvin at cornerback. I don't. Again, I'm arguing with you to argue that you guys make it like they beat Tennessee 20-7. They went to Denver. They won a game. They beat Cincinnati by 10. They beat the Jets by 14. Those aren't even close wins. They went to Oakland and won 2016. The last win against Indy was because, was a 38-10 win. They put up 353 yards. So Minshew's another year in the system. Maybe Matt's right. Maybe it is tank for Trevor Lawrence, and you want to make sure you get that number 1 pick, that you get Trevor Lawrence, or you could take Justin Fields, perhaps, whoever the quarterback is you want. But, my numbers have them winning 4.39 games. And the other thing you have to remember, Matt mentioned that teams are going to go and throw a clunker. Absolutely. Jacksonville is the last team in the world that you have circled going down and playing, but you are going to be playing in heat or humidity. Chicago's going to come down there at Christmas time, and if it's hot and humid, they may not be ready to play. Cleveland and Pittsburgh come down there and play in November. That could be a heat and humidity edge. So, while I don't think there's any value at even betting them 40-1, make the playoffs 9-1, I'm not going to bet them. I am not ready to say they are my worst team in the NFL. They are a 0. When I make my NFL power ratings, I start with my worst team 0 and I move up to the top. So I have them 12.5 points worse than the best team. I have them as the worst team, but I'm just not ready to say they're an 0-16 team. And I might think you may find some value. Even Indy week 1, they're going to be getting almost a touchdown. Week one, division home dogs have been money. Then you host Miami week 3 and you host Detroit. I mean, you very well could be 3-3 going into your bye week.
Okay. What are the odds of them losing every game?
I don't know. Probably 300-400 to 1.
People out there, I like that bet. I think they have more chance of losing every game this year than they do of winning 5. But we all differ. I mean, listen, this is why, betting is not easy, right, Ralph? I mean, if we knew, we would bet the house. We just don't.
Yeah. It's I'm going to put an email filler out there. So, some guys will give me a legitimate odds that they would post. Now, the theoretical on that, they're going to have a 50% hold. So you probably could double what a real Vegas casino would give you versus what the odds are.
Matt Joseph, any last thoughts on the Jacksonville Jags? And then we've got to wind this show down. We have a 4 p.m. show live on our YouTube channel. It's the Korean Baseball Show with Andrew McGinnis and Dave Koken.
Now, I said all that. They are as Ralph said, they are the worst team in football, and I'm not disputing that. The one thing, I'm looking at the Bears' schedule. Their game on December 27th, and let's say the Bears are in the divisional race, is between a road game at Minnesota and a home game against the Green Bay Packers. If there was ever a flat or look-ahead spot, then there would be one there December 27th. Going to Jacksonville between 2 division games. The Browns have one of those spots too. They got the Eagles, and then they've got a road game against Tennessee in between Jacksonville. I think it's a possibility that they're going to bite at least one team at home this season.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, they're going to. Otherwise, they wouldn't be 300 to 1 to not win a game. So, yeah, but seriously, under 4.5 seems to be the play for me. Mappy McMap, welcome to the show. Sean So Saucy. Love having all of you guys with us. Ralph, any last thoughts and we'll call it a show?
No, great division. We're going to see a lot of people knocking each other out. So, this could be one of those 8-8 seasons or 9-7s where your division champ has 9 wins.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the whole year, dude. I think we're going to have we're not going to have a lot of teams at 12, 13 wins this year. That's what I think. Matt?
Yeah, I mean, look, your Houston thing, I could see your path for Houston. I could see the 10 wins, but I can also see 6 of injuries just ravage that team this season. And, Deshaun Watson, it keeps skirting death essentially by getting sacked 106 times the last 2 seasons.
Guys, thank you so much for watching the NFL preview show. Next week is it for the 3 of us. We're going to be looking at the San Diego division. Well, they're not San Diego anymore, but they'll always be in my heart. So, guys, tune in next week, Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern. Love doing this with both of you, Matt and Ralph. Thank you, everybody, for watching the show. We made it all the way through the show with not one single thumbs down. Namaste for that. I'm sure they'll come. Make sure to check out the golf show. It's up on Wager Talk TV. NASCAR as well tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern. We got a full slate of shows going tomorrow. So thank you all for joining us during these trying times. And come back, sports, please. Later, boys.